Hey guys, welcome to podcast number 3. My name is Kazef Merali. I'm with PrimeHomesOrlando.com. Today I have with me a very special guest, someone whose role is extremely important in every transaction, whether it be a buy, a sell, a lease, it doesn't matter. It's something that everybody needs. I have with me today Jackie Berkson. She's an insurance broker and an agent of 25 years plus of experience. She specializes in home, auto, rental, boat, flood, business, and commercial insurance. So Jackie is part of LRA Insurance. It's Alhambra Risk Advisors.
Correct.
LRA has been proudly serving our community since 1987. Let's dive straight into her expertise and learn how she helps us and other individuals, our clients, to make sure that they're protected. Jackie, thank you so much for carving out some precious time and having this discussion of such importance with me. Thank you for joining us. Is anything you'd like to say before we jump in straight into the questions?
Well, Kosov, I really appreciate the opportunity to present today, only because of what you said, piggybacking the fact that it is just so important in all your transactions today to make sure that you have insurance in place.
Absolutely. I prepared a list of questions I'm going to ask Jackie. Some of them are informative, some of them are controversial. I'll let you guys decide. Question number 1. What are the most important types of home insurance that every homeowner in Florida needs to have?
I think if you're a property owner in Florida, you need to have homeowner's insurance. As a primary homeowner, you need to be protected for anything that can happen in Florida to that property. Secondary, as a landlord, not only is your property protected, but also for liability, because you are literally letting strangers live in that home and you can't watch over your home all the time. So any kind of property home insurance is probably the most important here in Florida.
Even if you're renting or
The exception would be if someone owned a property free and clear and they decided to self-insure, which I don't recommend in Florida because of all the perils that happen in Florida and we're subject to. So unless you have very, very deep pockets, I would not recommend self-insuring.
Of course, I think if somebody's property is free and clear, they would be smart enough to ensure that stays free and clear.
You would be surprised.
Thank you. Moving on to question number 2, and I think the biggest concern, not only for Floridians, but from people from out of state who are constantly thinking about coming to Florida, but then there's one thing that keeps them at bay, and that's a big question mark in their head, is the weather. How do hurricanes and storms impact home insurance in Florida, and what should homeowners do to stay protected?
Sure. First of all is to have coverage and making sure that you are covered and protected. So one of the things that we need to keep in mind is hurricanes are a real threat here in Florida. And to keep in mind that hurricane season starts in June every year and ends at the end of November. So prior to that, I would recommend making sure that you have adequate coverage, that your deductibles are to the level that you're comfortable with, that you have proper coverage, that your policy is in effect, because sometimes your policy is paid through an escrow account, and sometimes your mortgage is sold off to a different mortgage company, and sometimes the wires get crossed and no communication occurs, and so now your homeowner's insurance is lapsed because A and B didn't communicate about transferring that escrow account and paying the insurance policy. So making sure that all of your policies are straight and active and in good standing.
You said something interesting. While things are moving around, and let's say there was a hurricane while A is selling to B and there's no communication, is the client going to suffer? How would you address it as an insurance professional?
What we typically do as our agency, I can speak to that, is we get ahead of things, because this is not something that changes. It's a constant every year, and we prepare in March for the upcoming hurricane season. So we do just a little checklist, send out to all our clients, and we let them know of things that they need to look out for to make their home ready for these events. One of the things that are simple are just trimming their trees or the bushes. If you're looking to purchase a home or you're under contract to purchase a home, if there is any indication that there's a storm looming that could be a threat to Florida, we also send out reminders that make sure that your policies are bound, that you have proper coverage, because these insurance companies are quick to place a moratorium on business if there is a hurricane threatening Florida. And there is a graph that we rely on heavily. It's called the cone of uncertainty. So it literally looks like an upside down ice cream cone.
Okay.
And the moment that cone, the Florida falls into that cone, that's when a lot of these insurance companies cease from writing new policies, making changes to your existing policies, even making offering quotes. So they just kind of still and hope and wait for the hurricane to pass. And once it's no longer a threat, they lift that moratorium and business is as usual.
Understood. So something to prepare for a hurricane is not only water and flashlights, but making sure that your insurance is up to par, because then there's a reason for them not to cover you if you're not on top of your insurance, I'm assuming.
Absolutely. Insurance companies, it's not that they're the bad guys, but they are a business. And there are rules by which they want you as the insured and them that they should play by. So they want to make sure that they're covered and that, of course, you're covered as well. For the most part, I've seen that they've been fair. Okay. So if there is just like lapse in timing between your check and them receiving it, they usually give you a grace period. They're not wholeheartedly evil. You're not really like that. But especially if you called me and said, yeah, I get calls every day. Jackie, I sent the check. I got a letter of cancellation, but I sent the check and closings. Title companies sometimes are the ones, because they get all the money and they distribute and pay everything at closing. Sometimes there's a delay with that. As long as we can prove that there was a closing, they know that they need to afford that insured a grace period, and they're really good about it.
Understood. So moving on to question number 3, when it comes to choosing a policy, what should people look for when picking a home insurance company? And are there warning signs that they need to know of to avoid any obstacles?
Because if I'm going to say something that's very partial, and that is the fact that you need to work with an insurance broker as opposed to a corporation. Okay? What I mean by that is, for someone like me, for example, if you should call me, the number you're calling is directly to me, and that's by design. Because you have questions, you don't know when that question is going to arise. You as a real estate professional, you could be showing someone a home, and a question that arises constantly is, how much do you think it costs to insure this home? Do you think that plumbing is going to be a problem? At what age do I need these types of inspections? Things like that. Kind of nice to have someone like me on call to be able to ask those questions so that you can get factual information that you can use for your transaction. But mostly it's working with someone that's knowledgeable, that's experienced, is going to be your first great step towards a good insurance relationship. The second is someone like me is going to be able to guide you. Often people choose their insurance company by price, and that is a necessity these days because of our economy. That's not the only reason why you should choose an insurance company, a particular insurance company in Florida. There have been some updates in our industry, in Florida particularly, that help the consumer be treated more fairly with insurance. So thanks to that, I can guide them towards the best coverage available to them at the best pricing. But it really has to do with the relationship with that agent and how well they're going to treat you. When you speak to a corporation, I feel like you're never going to speak to the same person twice.
True.
With me, you get the exact opposite. You're always going to be able to speak with me. If I don't have the answer, I will find the answer for you. I sit down with everyone, just like I'm sitting down with you and having a conversation about the pros and cons about insurance and what to look for and what not to look for.
I actually agree with, I'm going to break your response down into 2.
Sure.
For the first part is, I absolutely agree with Jackie. Somebody that you can guide you through this is extremely important, and not just after the fact of getting insurance. Actually, Jackie has, whenever we have an insurance question between us 100 agents in this Coldwell Banker, the first person that comes up is Jackie, and there's not been an instance where Jackie's been like, hey, let me get back to you. I'm not sure. It's always specific answers to questions, and thank you for that. Thank you for always picking up our phone calls, responding on the weekends. I remember texting you once at 9 a.m. and there was you gave me the exact answer I needed. So thank you very much for that.
You're very welcome.
The second part is the price. It all comes down to price, especially today. Now myself, I'm going to shop around for any insurance as best as I can. I'll cut everything I can that I don't need. I'll do that. But how can homeowners lower their insurance costs?
So it depends on the customer that I'm working with. So if someone calls me and says, I have a particular policy and I got my renewal and the price is off the charts. I just got a 40, 50, 60% increase on my insurance policy. I need to see what else is out there. So someone like me, an insurance broker, I'm going to look at the 52 A-rated companies that we work with, which by the way are probably about 40 more companies than most agencies work with. We have long-standing relationships with all our carriers. So we're going to shop that for you and give you the best price. Now, when you are reshopping your policies, what we call it remarketing or reshopping your policy, if your home is 15 years or older, I'm going to recommend that you get what they call a 4-point inspection. And a 4-point inspection is strictly for insurance purposes. Nobody else cares about a 4-point inspection. And what that is, it's a boots on the ground for the insurance company, so they don't have to go out there, examine your home, evaluate it, and come back to you with a quote. It's basically, you have the home inspected for these 4 or 5 points that they're mostly interested in. They're not looking to turn over stones. They really want to make sure that the air conditioning, so the AC and heating, so HVAC systems, the plumbing, the roof, the electricity, and the water heater, they're all in good working condition, and that there aren't any materials in the home that could be an issue, right? So knowing that and having the correct information, we're able to offer quotes and offer you competitive quotes. So if you have a material in the home that is objectionable, but we have carriers that work with that material, then of course it's going to be a little more challenging to find a policy, but we do. It's just not going to be as competitive as a home that has all the updates and all the materials that are fully acceptable. So that's a 4-point inspection. And how that saves you money, it's not designed to save you money, it's more about qualifying for insurance to place you with a particular carrier, okay? But how that might save you money is if the home is in good working condition with all the updates, it opens up a lot of different carriers. And the more options you have, the more competitive the pricing. So that's a way that can save you money. The one thing in insurance type of inspection that is designed specifically to save you money is called a wind mitigation inspection.
Wind mitigation, okay.
Now, not all homes qualify for it, but the ones that do are usually homes that have had a new roof replaced after 2001. So towards the end of 2001, I conservatively like to say in 2002 and beyond, because this program was placed at the end of 2001. So I just say 2002, if you had a new roof and the home is built before 2002, that's when this inspection is going to save you a bunch of money on your insurance. Okay. So each of these inspections I mentioned run you about $100 to $150 each, but what you're going to see in return in savings is dramatic. So you're looking at least $500 to thousands of dollars in insurance savings
annually. Okay.
It's worthwhile. And when we speak to someone that you've referred us, we always ask the questions to generate discounts. So some people don't like me asking so many questions, but there's a reason for it. First of all, you have to qualify to get insurance. And number two, I'm really trying to get you as many discounts as possible. And these questions will allow me to do that for you.
Understood. Is there a certain number of how old the roof has to be in order to qualify to get insurance without having to replace the whole thing?
The shingle roof maximum age allowable for most carriers is 15 years old.
Okay.
There are a few carriers out there that will still insure that roof up to 20, maybe 22. But that 4-point inspection, it really hinges on what that inspection says. So with regard to the roof, if it says that that roof is 16 years old, but it has a 5-year lifespan left on it, we can work with that.
You can work with it. Okay. Moving on to question number 5. If someone lives in an HOA community, how does that affect their home insurance? Do they need extra coverage?
An HOA is involved, and the community is a traditional condominium So in other words, the HOA is most likely going to offer insurance for the exterior of the buildings. That's when we want to know at that point, what exactly of the exterior do they have insurance for? If it is a traditional condominium, it's safe to assume that they are going to cover for anything that happens to the exterior of that building. So at that point, what I'm going to offer the insured is going to be a studs in policy.
Okay.
Anything the walls in is the type of coverage that I'm going to offer them, and that's an
HO6 that covers the everything interior.
HO6, okay? That's a condo policy is what they call it. Now, doesn't always have to be a condominium. Now, there are times when a townhouse, when you've got, instead of a condominium, which typically is homes that are built up on top of each other in a building, now you have homes that are side to side and have shared walls. Now, most of those townhomes are called fee simple, which means you own the land that's beneath them. And so we have to really delve in. We don't assume that that's going to be covered by a homeowners association. So we ask a few extra questions to make sure, because a lot of times I've noticed that a realtor that is listing a townhouse will say that the association takes care of the insurance. So there's terms that are used very loosely. One of them is covered. And when somebody says that the community covers the exterior, I always have to ask specific questions, because a townhouse community is fee simple, and most likely, even though they say they cover, what they mean is that they'll cover the roof if they deem it necessary because it's aesthetically pleasing, right? So they reserve the right to replace the roofs if it starts looking ugly in the neighborhood. Because,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so they can do that if they want to, but they reserve the right to do that. Doesn't mean that if you had a fire in your townhome and it went through the roof, that it would be covered.
So what if it's quite the opposite? What if it rains bad and there's a storm? Now there's a leak in the roof that could have been prevented, but now that water is intruding in your property. So how does that work? Who is the HOA going to be responsible for that leak and in everything that happened after the fact?
So Cosette, a great example of what I'm saying, how it's important for me as an agent to delve into those things deeper. And what I typically do, because if I start asking questions to someone that's just wanting to purchase a townhouse, it can be very overwhelming, right? And it could be discouraging, and I don't want to do that. So what I typically ask for is a copy of the covenants and restrictions.
Understood.
And there's verbiage in that specifically states the responsibilities of the homeowners association versus the insured in these situations.
Okay, information.
And there are two different types of policies involved in that case. So I don't want to offer them one thing and it needs to be a different thing. However, if there's a mortgage company involved, you bet that before they mortgage on that home, they're going to have the ultimate word on that, and they're going to tell me if I write the wrong policy, it needs to be the other.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So that's
a good safety net. It is. Quick, I want to keep this very short on the next one because I'm a landlord, so I thought it would be important to ask. If you rent out your house, how is landlord insurance different from a regular home insurance? Is it worth having it as a landlord?
Absolutely worth it. And you have to protect yourself because, like I said initially, you're letting strangers occupy that home. You don't know what their habits are. You can only check their credit and their ability to pay you on a monthly basis, but you don't know the type of tenant that they're going to be. So it's important that you have someone in there, and if you happen to make that mistake and a tenant that is a party animal, they have a bunch of parties.
Yep.
Are they going to take care of your property? They tell you they're not going to have animals, but then they snuck in a pit bull. How does that affect you? Right? You said no animals allowed, but so what I do with my rentals, I'll tell you from firsthand experience, I require them, first of all, to carry animal liability insurance.
If they have an animal, or does it matter?
Whether they have it or not.
Really? Okay.
Very inexpensive policy. Okay? Have them sign an affidavit that they will not. And if they do, you need to have an animal liability policy in place because you never know. Here's the other thing. Just because it's not your pet as a tenant, if you have a friend that brings over their dog, and that dog, first of all, is not in their normal environment, they're out of their element.
Yes.
They bite somebody at that property. Do you think it's your friends and their dog that are responsible? It's going to be you, as the landlord,
if that
tenant does not have an animal liability policy.
Any chance you could share how much it may cost?
Well, just sold one earlier this week. It was $150 a year for $50,000 worth of coverage.
That's
for a German Shepherd. It doesn't really matter the breed. They just cover an animal liability issue.
Which is important to have. That makes sense.
Absolutely. And then the difference basically between a landlord and a homeowner's policy is the personal property, because typically when you rent out a property, it doesn't have anything but some appliances. So no personal belongings will be part of that, unless you have a short-term rental that comes furnished, and then of course you want personal liability.
Moving on to question number 7, and I think this is on everybody's mind, including mine. High costs. Florida has some of the highest insurance rates in the country. Do you think the system is fair, or does it need to change?
I think it's fair in the fact that we live in a state that anything and everything can happen, right? Hurricanes are major. If you have a major catastrophic episode, I mean, Andrew would happen in South Florida. This was before your time, basically. It devastated South Florida. It changed the face of insurance in Florida.
Really?
Mm-hmm. In 2004, we had 3 back-to-back hurricanes. We had Charlie, Jennifer, and Michael. Back-to-back in a 3-month period. Devastated the state. Devastating. That changed the face of insurance in Florida as well. In 2004, we were losing major, well-known companies in the state. Companies like State Farm, Allstate, were all leaving the state. They decided they didn't want to do business in Florida anymore.
A lot of risk involved when it comes to this hurricane. It just had Milton recently, and it devastated Tampa and that coastal area. It looks pretty bad. I think we got lucky in Central, thank God.
We did. But just so you know, types of incidences definitely affect the cost of insurance. Things in place that are happening. Governor DeSantis has pretty much dropped the gauntlet and said, you guys can't figure this out on your own? Well, I'm going to make some reforms. So in the last year and a half, there have been some reforms made to the insurance industry that we haven't seen the effects of it positively yet, because there's companies that are coming into the state. We're not going to see it for another year or two, because part of the deal of them coming to the state is that they have to do citizens take-up insurance.
I see.
Right?
So they have to take over Citizens policies.
A lot of Citizens policies, because Citizens is overburdened. It's just not healthy to have that many policies in one government program.
Wow.
So they said, if you want to come here, enjoy the tax breaks, but you have to do 2 years worth of Citizens takeout before you can sell to the general public.
That's interesting. Mm-hmm. So sticking on this topic here, hurricane insurance, right? I mean, you guys offer hurricane insurance.
Well, hurricane insurance is part of your homeowner's policy. It's
regardless.
Regardless. I cannot sell you a hurricane-only policy. Just like you cannot, if you have a mortgage on your home, they want you fully insured. And that includes hurricane insurance. So that's your wind portion of your policy.
Understood.
And all policies have that.
Understood. And then it depends on your deductible as to what it equates to, right? What is the standard you would recommend somebody have as far as the deductible goes when it comes to a hurricane?
You have 3 deductibles that are really important to know within your homeowner's insurance policy. You have your hurricane deductible, which is typically 2% of the dwelling value. There's higher percentages available. Depending on your income threshold is what I would recommend, but most of us have 2%, and I wouldn't recommend anything higher than that. The next one is going to be your sinkhole coverage insurance. Okay, that portion is going to be 10% of your dwelling value for sinkholes. And then you have your all other perils, which is anything that isn't hurricane or sinkhole. And that can vary. You can get it as low as $500. You can get it for $1,000, $2,500, $5,000, and then increments of $5,000. So there are options. I don't recommend going above $2,500 for the year, because most of us, if we get hit with something, you want to be able to rely on your insurance policy.
Of course, I agree with that 100%. Moving on to question number 8. Some people say that insurance fraud is driving up costs in Florida. How much of that is a problem, and homeowners know about this?
Absolutely. Well, it all stems in 2004, like I mentioned before, COZIP, where we had the back-to-back hurricanes, right? So because of all that devastation, it invited a lot of not so honest vendors, let's say. A lot of them came from out of state, and they were predatory. So what happened is at the time we did not have anything in place to stop what they call assignment of benefits claims that were fraudulent. So what that was a portion of your policy that basically a roofer can knock on your door and say, because if we are in your neighborhood right now replacing the roof of a couple of your neighbors and we're doing free inspections in your neighborhood, would you like us to check it out because they got a free roof because we were able to identify a faulty roof from these storms.
Okay.
So you said, hey, it's free, why not? Go ahead, get on there. They get on there, they come down and said, Kozif, you are a victim of this as well. So you should probably file an insurance claim. But you know what? Our company has a program where if you sign this paper, letting us do this for you, we'll negotiate directly with your insurance company, and your roof is going to be paid 100% guaranteed. Sounds great?
This does sound great.
Where do I sign? So you're signing. What you're signing is basically any rights you have to any money that insurance company would pay for that roof. It would get paid to that roofer. So at that point, if you decided to bypass that and you wanted to work directly with your insurance company, is disposed to help you with that because we just had 3 hurricanes. There is reason to file that claim and you would have it paid justifiably. But if you allowed that roofer to do that for you, not only are they going to put a roof on there, but they're going to choose how much they're going to charge you. If you went directly to the insurance company, that roof may have been only $10,000, $12,000. But now that you're working with an assignment of benefits that you assigned to that roofer, now it's going to be closer to $20,000, $25,000.
Oh, wow.
Right? And they don't have to justify costs because the moment that the insurance company says, Mr. Roofer, that roof should only be $10,000 to $12,000. Why are you charging us $20,000 to $25,000? This is because that's our cost, and it's supply and demand, and either you take it or you don't. Well, the insurance company says we are not going to tolerate that. At that point, that roofer has in-house counsel, an in-house attorney that will write a letter of lawsuit. They're going to file a lawsuit. Now, onto that $20,000 to $25,000, they're going to tack on another $5,000 to $10,000 for that lawyer.
Interesting.
So now what should have been a $10,000 to $12,000 claim
is
now a $30,000, $35,000, $40,000 claim. And that is what's been happening. That's cost these insurance companies either their business or it's made us have to pay this much.
And I'm thinking it still happens, right?
Well, not to that extent anymore. One of the reforms that DeSantis has put in place has not stopped it, but halted to a point. Now, instead of being able to just sign that assignment of benefits, you have to, it's by law that you have to give the insurance company the option to negotiate that directly with the homeowner.
I see. Okay.
After, if the insurance company denies you, you can hire an attorney, right? You can hire a private adjuster. There's various ways of addressing it that really makes the insurance company take note and take you seriously. And that's what I give counsel. That's the kind of counseling I give to my insureds, is I basically ask them to give me a call. Let's have a conversation. Because sometimes when you call, if you're working with a corporation, let's say you decided to go online for a quote and you have an online insurance company. You call them and say, hey, something happened this past weekend. I have a small leak in my kitchen. I'm not sure if I'm going to file a claim or not. Could you remind me of what my deductibles are and what is covered? And they're going to tell you this is what's covered, and it is covered. Your deductible's $1,000. Would you like to do, well, if it's just $1,000, I don't think this is that much. It's maybe an $1,800 claim. I don't think I'm going to file it, but thank you very much for answering my call. Have a great day. Later on, they get, maybe a few months down the road, they get a renewal letter, and they see that their insurance, like everyone else's, has had a huge rate hike. So they call someone like me, let's say, they say, hey, I'd like to shop my insurance. So I do everything that I do. And when they say, I love that rate, let's go with that, I go into an application and suddenly I get alerted. They had a claim 6 months ago. And so they didn't know they had that claim. So I call them and I say, Mr. and Mrs. Insured, is this your claim? Well, I never placed a claim, but I did call my insurance carrier to find out if I was covered. And they said I was, but I chose not file it. Well, unfortunately, because you're working with a corporation and you spoke to someone that's an employee, they have to record every single conversation and every single phone call that you make. Whether you file the claim or not, they file it as a claim that was not paid. They really treat us differently in here in Florida when it comes to homeowners, because these insurance companies are in the business to do business but also protect their interests.
Understood.
So when you call in for a potential problem, they're noting it as a pre-existing condition, right? So if down the road, 2 years later, you're calling them to place a claim for something that may have happened 2 years before,
they're not going to cover it. Well, kind of
unfortunately, right? Those
does make
loopholes.
sense.
But when you speak to someone like me, I'm a broker, you're calling me and saying, hey, Jackie, this happened. I'm going to tell you everything that you ask a corporate company, but that conversation stays between us. So I'm a liaison, and you will not be penalized for asking me a question.
I don't know, that's good to know, actually. So we'll take a last question here, and I think this is an important one to take. What are the biggest mistakes people make when filing a claim, now that we spoke about claims, and how can they avoid these mistakes?
I think the most important thing to know about claims and your insurance policy is that you deductibles, because here in Florida, you're judged very harshly on your claims history. Each one of us has an insurance score. Just like a credit score, they're going to run your insurance score every time you want a quote or you want to bind a policy. So any activity you have relating to your insurance history, that's what your insurance score is going to be
dependent on,
affected, right? So when you call me, I'm going to know how many claims you've had in the period that you've had them, what they were for. So if you have a deductible for anything that is in hurricane that's $1,000, and you place a claim for $1,800 because you had a little something happen in the home, that means that you got paid an $800 check. That is not a claim that you want to place, because that's the type of claim that they judge you harshly on.
Really? Okay.
So you get 2 of those in a 3-year period. So you've already got 1 of the 2 that you're allowed in a 3-year period. If you happen to get a second one in that 3rd year period, chances are you're going to get canceled, and it's going to be very difficult for you to find insurance anywhere, let alone affordable insurance.
I feel like taking an insurance crash course here. Thank you so much for that information.
You're welcome.
But I think we've come to an end of this very insightful, very knowledgeable session about home insurance. Jackie, thank you so much for your valuable insights. It's been an absolute pleasure having you. To all our viewers, if you're looking for expert advice, and I say you heard her for the last 25, 30 minutes or so, knowledgeable, and thank you again, Jackie, for joining me on this session. I look forward to working with you in the future, and thank you guys for this episode. You can reach out to her directly. I'm going to put her information on my description if you need any help. It doesn't have to be purchasing. She's ready to answer any questions you may have. And if you're looking to buy or sell, or need a home evaluation, or you want to chat about real estate over coffee, feel